The night was quiet, the kind of heavy silence that wrapped around the neighborhood after midnight. Street lamps buzzed faintly, casting tired orange halos onto the slick pavement outside Daniel Hayes' window. He sat at the kitchen table, nursing a glass of water, staring blankly at the muted TV in the corner. The house felt too large, too empty. His wife, Laura, had been working late again, and his daughter Emma had gone to bed hours ago. When the phone rang, the sound shattered the silence like glass breaking. Daniel's brow furrowed. Calls this late never brought good news. He snatched the phone up, his voice gruff with concern. "Hello." On the other end, a steady but grave voice. "Mr. Hayes? This is Officer Miller with the county police. I need you to stay calm. Your daughter, she's in the hospital." For a split second, Daniel's brain froze. The words didn't fit together. Your daughter and hospital sounded like two strangers forced into the same sentence. Then, like a dam breaking, dread flooded through him. My daughter?" His voice cracked, harsher than he expected. "What happened? Is she alive?" "She's stable," the officer assured, his tone carrying both professionalism and heaviness. "But she's been injured. We need you to come immediately." The glass in Daniel's hand slipped and hit the table, water spilling across the wood unnoticed. His pulse thundered. He didn't wait for more details, didn't ask which hospital or how serious the injuries were. Instinct took over. He grabbed his keys, his jacket, and was out the door in seconds. The cool night air bit at his skin, but he barely felt it. His truck roared to life, tires screeching against the asphalt as he tore down the empty suburban streets. The city blurred past him, neon signs and red lights flashing like warning signals. Every second stretched into an eternity, his mind spiraling with worst-case scenarios. He pictured Emma's bright face, her small frame curled up on the couch with her sketchbook, her shy laugh when she showed him her drawings. Now, those same images collided with darker ones, blood, bandages, her fragile body broken. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel. No, she's okay. She has to be okay. Daniel's training, the years of calculated focus drilled into him as a special forces operative, should have steadied him. But this wasn't a battlefield overseas. This was his daughter, and nothing in his past had prepared him for this. The hospital loomed ahead, a sterile fortress of glass and fluorescent lights. He screeched into the emergency parking zone, barely remembering to throw the truck into park before leaping out. Inside, the harsh smell of antiseptic hit him like a wall. The lobby was too bright, too cold. He rushed to the front desk, his voice rough and urgent. "Emma Hayes, 12 years old. Where is she?" The nurse looked up, startled by the storm in his tone, but quickly typed on her computer. "Room 214. Down the hall to the right." Daniel didn't thank her. He was already moving, boots pounding against the tiled floor. His heart hammered as he passed stretchers and shadowed figures in the waiting area, but everything blurred around him until he reached the door. He pushed it open, and the sight inside hollowed him out. Emma lay on the bed, her small body dwarfed by white sheets. Her right arm was wrapped tightly in a cast, suspended by a sling. Bruises mottled her pale skin. She turned her head at the sound of the door, her eyes swollen from crying. "Dad." Her voice cracked, a fragile whisper. For the first time in years, Daniel felt his knees threaten to give way. He stepped forward slowly, as if afraid she'd vanish if he moved too quickly. He sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair gently from her damp forehead. I'm here, baby." Her lips trembled. She swallowed hard, as if holding back words that hurt more than her broken arm. Her eyes darted to the hallway, then back to him. "Dad, I saw Mom with another man." The words hit like a blow. Daniel froze, his mind trying to catch up, but Emma's voice kept spilling out, weak, terrified. "He saw me. He got so angry. He grabbed me. I tried to run, but he pushed me. My arm snapped. He said," tears streamed down her cheeks. "He said if I told anyone, he'd hurt you next." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, the room spun. He pulled her close, careful not to touch her injured arm, whispering fiercely, "You're safe. I promise. He'll never touch you again." Inside, However, something darker awakened. A cold fury. His military instincts sharpened, no longer dormant. Whoever had laid a hand on his daughter had made the gravest mistake of his life. Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing with a deadly calm. He didn't know I was special forces, Daniel thought. I wasn't going to warn him. I was going to end him. The vow still burned in Daniel's chest when the door eased open and a nurse slipped in with quiet shoes and a clipboard. She adjusted Emma's four, her hands practiced and gentle. Pain level, she asked softly. Emma blinked. 5, maybe 6. We'll keep it managed, the nurse assured, then glanced at Daniel. Dr. Patel will explain the x-rays. Officer Miller is also here to take a brief statement, if that's okay. Daniel's jaw unclenched by force. Only if Emma's up for it. Emma nodded once, small and brave. Officer Miller entered, hat in hand, voice low to match the room. Hi, Emma. I'm glad you're safe. He took out a notepad, but didn't open it yet. We'll go slow. You're not in trouble. Emma's throat bobbed. I went to Mom's office to surprise her. She said she'd be late. What time? Miller asked. 7:30. The glass doors were still open. I took the elevator to the 8th floor. Her face twisted with the memory. Her door was cracked. I heard laughing. A man's voice. Daniel watched her, his hand hovering near her shoulder, unsure where he could touch that wouldn't hurt. Emma swallowed. He wore a dark suit, big shoulders, short hair. He smelled like cologne and bourbon. He had this coin on the desk. He kept flipping it with his thumb. She mimed the motion with her good hand, a tiny metallic clink echoing in her head. When he saw me, he got mad. He grabbed my wrist. I pulled away and fell. It cracked. He said if I told anyone, he'd hurt Dad next. Miller's pen scratched the page. Name of the company? Emma blinked, thinking. The plaque said Northbridge Logistics. Mom's office number. 814. Daniel filed it away like coordinates. Northbridge. 8th floor. A gentle knock. Dr. Patel stepped in, silver hair, kind eyes behind square glasses. He greeted Emma first. Hi, kiddo. I'm Dr. Patel. Your x-rays show a distal radius fracture, clean break, not displaced, a hairline on the ulna. The cast will stay 6 to 8 weeks. We've documented contusions on the shoulder. Pain will spike tonight, then ease. No PE for a bit, all right? He winked. Emma gave a shaky nod. Dr. Patel turned to Daniel, tone shifting, professional, careful. Given what she reported, I've marked this as a suspected assault. That triggers mandatory reporting. We'll photograph the injuries, note the angles of impact. It matters later. His eyes held Daniel's a beat longer. I'm sorry you're here for this. Thank you, Daniel said, voice rough. While the nurse photographed bruises, Daniel stepped into the hallway, bracing both palms against cold wall tile. Box breathing. For in. Hold. For out. Hold. The rage didn't vanish. It cooled into a blade. He called Laura. Straight to voicemail. He texted, Emma's in the ER. Broken arm. Come now. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Finally on. He stared at the lowercase. He used to know the cadence of his wife's messages. Punctuation when she was composed, typos when she was crying. Felt like a mask. When he re-entered, Officer Miller closed his notebook. We'll send a car to Northbridge tonight to lock the scene. I recommend you not contact anyone there directly. He paused, measuring the man in front of him. I can post a unit outside this room till morning. Daniel considered the offer. Then Emma's small hand clenched the sheet. Yes, please. Miller nodded and left. The room exhaled. Machines hummed. Emma's lashes stuck together with dried tears. Was it my fault? She whispered. No, Daniel said, immediate. No, baby. You walked into a room and a coward made a choice. That's on him. She stared at the cast. Will Mom be mad? The question landed like a stone in water. Daniel forced gentleness in his voice. Mom will be worried. That's all you need to think about tonight. Emma studied his face, as if searching for cracks. Are you mad at her? Daniel's throat tightened. He chose the only truth he could carry right now. I'm mad at the man who hurt you. He reached for his phone again. Opened the Notes app. Typed. Northbridge Logistics. 8th floor. Coin flip. Bourbon. Short hair. Big frame. Dominant right hand. grip bruise pattern. He added a memory from Emma's description that wouldn't leave him alone. The coin flick. He'd seen that restlessness in men who couldn't sit with silence, and in soldiers who needed the weight of something in their palm. Dr. Patel returned with discharge estimates and careful instructions. She'll be drowsy. Keep her comfortable. Ice 20 minutes on off. If she wakes with severe pain or numb fingers, call. Daniel nodded, absorbing detail as purpose. Action kept the ceiling from collapsing. Footsteps hurried down the hall. The door pushed open. Laura stood there, hair windblown, lipstick smeared soft at one corner. Her eyes landed on the cast, and she pressed a knuckle to her mouth as if to dam a sound. "Emma," she breathed, stepping in. Emma shrank an inch into the pillow. Daniel saw it. The flinch, small as a shiver, but real as a siren. He rose to standing, moving between the bed and the door by instinct, his voice even, his gaze unreadable. "Laura," he said, "we need to talk." The room seemed to shrink when Laura stepped inside. Her perfume lingered faintly, but beneath it was the sharp tang of anxiety, a scent Daniel had learned to recognize long before. Back when soldiers returned from raids, smelling of sweat and fear, even if they wore clean uniforms. Emma clutched her blanket tighter. Her casted arm trembled slightly, and though she didn't say a word, Daniel saw her body's language as clearly as a flare in the dark. She was afraid. Not of him. Not of the hospital. Afraid of her mother. Daniel shifted his stance, not aggressive, but unmistakably firm, planting himself between the bed and Laura. His voice was calm, steady, almost surgical. "She told me what happened." Laura froze. Her hand still hovered near her mouth. What did she say?" "She walked in on you. And him." Daniel's eyes, sharp as glass, didn't blink. "He broke her arm." For a moment, Laura's face crumbled, guilt flickering raw in her eyes. But just as quickly, she gathered herself, pasting on a strained mask. "Daniel, she's confused. She must have." Emma's small voice cut through, trembling. "I'm not confused, Mom." Both parents turned toward her. Emma's eyes brimmed with tears, but her jaw, despite shaking, was set with determination. "I saw you. I saw him. He grabbed me." Her voice faltered as she looked at her father. "I told you the truth." Daniel's chest swelled with pride and fury all at once. His daughter, scared, broken but brave. Laura's lips parted, then closed. She looked away, her shoulders slumping for just a second, as though the weight of her choices pressed her spine into the ground. But when she turned back, her voice sharpened, defensive. "Daniel, you don't understand. It's complicated." Daniel stepped closer, his height and composure a wall she couldn't scale. His voice dropped, low and lethal. "There's nothing complicated about a man laying a hand on my daughter. Nothing." Silence thickened the air. Emma wiped at her cheeks, shrinking further under the tension. Daniel noticed and forced himself to kneel by her side, softening his tone as if changing languages. "Get some rest, sweetheart. I'll be right here. Always." Emma nodded weakly, eyes finally drifting shut under the medication's pull. Only when her breathing even did Daniel rise again, his gaze never leaving Laura. Hallway. Now. The corridor hummed with fluorescent lights. Nurses passed by, their sneakers squeaking softly, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside room 214. Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed, face set in stone. Laura wrung her hands, eyes darting anywhere but his. "Daniel, please. I didn't want this." "Didn't want what?" His voice was quiet but razor sharp. "Didn't want to betray me? Didn't want to put our daughter in a hospital bed?" Her eyes shone with tears. "You think it's that simple? You don't know what he's capable of." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then tell me. Make me understand why a man had his hands on Emma. Why she looked at you like she was afraid." Laura's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it, swallowing words she wasn't ready to say. "You can't fix this by charging in like you always do," she whispered. "This isn't war, Daniel." Daniel leaned in, his eyes narrowing, voice deadly calm. When he touched Emma, it became war. The words hung between them, heavy and final. At that moment, Officer Miller approached, flipping open his notebook. His presence pulled Laura upright, like a puppet yanked by strings. "Mr. Hayes," Miller said, "I'll need to ask your wife a few questions. She may have insight into the man your daughter described." Laura froze, her face draining of color. Her eyes flicked toward Daniel, wide and pleading, not for protection, but for silence. And in that instant, Daniel knew. She wasn't just guilty. She was hiding something. Something bigger than an affair. Something that made Emma's broken arm only the first crack in a much darker wall. Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. The soldier in him stirred again, quiet but undeniable. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about secrets and the danger they carried. And Daniel was ready to tear every one of them out of the shadows. The cafeteria was almost empty at that hour, its rows of plastic chairs glowing under harsh fluorescent lights. A vending machine hummed in the corner, the only sound in the quiet space. Daniel chose the farthest table, his back to the wall, eyes fixed on the doorway as Laura followed reluctantly. She looked smaller here, out of Emma's presence, her shoulders rounded, her eyes restless, like she expected someone to walk in and drag her away. Daniel studied her the way he'd once studied targets through a scope. Every twitch of her fingers, every shift in her breathing was data. "You're going to tell me," Daniel said, voice low, steady, "why my daughter had to be carried out of an office building with a broken arm." Laura's lips parted, then pressed together. She folded her hands on the table, then unfolded them again, restless. "If I tell you, things will get worse." "They're already worse," Daniel shot back. His words weren't loud, but they were sharp enough to cut. "Our daughter is in a hospital bed, Laura. If there's something you're hiding, now's the time." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time that night, her mask cracked. "You think I wanted this? You think I don't hate myself every second?" "Then explain it," Daniel demanded. Laura's chest rose and fell quickly. Her voice dropped to a whisper, raw and fragile. "His name is Richard Kane. My boss." The name hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. His pulse spiked. Richard Kane. The sound carried weight, a name carved into the worst parts of his past. "He found things," Laura continued, trembling. "Financial records. Mistakes at work. He threatened to expose me, to destroy us. And then, he started pushing for more. I didn't know how to stop it." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his knuckles whitening against the table. "So you let him into our lives?" Tears slid down Laura's cheeks. "I thought I could control it. I thought if I went along, if I kept him satisfied, he'd leave you and Emma alone. I never thought Emma would." Her voice cracked. "I never thought she'd walk in." Daniel leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose, the weight of her words pressing on his chest. He wasn't sure which cut deeper, that Kane was involved or that Laura had surrendered so completely to him. "Emma's afraid of you," he said finally, his voice quieter but colder. "Do you understand what that means? She doesn't see you as her mother right now. She sees you as someone who stood beside the man who hurt her." Laura covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. Daniel stood, his chair scraping against the linoleum. His movements were precise, controlled, but there was an energy under his skin that he couldn't contain. He looked down at her, his voice steady but filled with steel. "This ends tonight. Whatever Kane thinks he has over you, it's done. I'll deal with him." Laura's head snapped up, her face blotched with tears. "No, you don't understand. He's dangerous, Daniel. More dangerous than you know." Daniel's eyes darkened. "I know exactly how dangerous he is." When he walked back into the hospital room, Emma was still asleep, her breathing soft, her tiny fingers curled into the blanket. Daniel sat in the chair beside her, watching her chest rise and fall. For the first time in years, memories of the desert came flooding back. The sound of gunfire, the heat of betrayal, the moment Kane had abandoned them. He had buried those memories, but now they were clawing their way to the surface, demanding reckoning. Daniel reached for Emma's uninjured hand, holding it gently. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he whispered. "I'm not going to let him win." Emma stirred slightly, whispering in her sleep, "Don't leave me, Dad." His throat tightened. He brushed her hair back, his voice breaking as he whispered back, "Never. I'll never leave you. As the night deepened, Daniel's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about protecting Emma anymore. It was about finishing a war that should have ended years ago. And Richard Kane had no idea that the man he once abandoned had just declared it. The night pressed heavy against the windshield as Daniel drove home from the hospital. Emma was stable, her medication pulling her into deep, dreamless sleep. Laura had offered to stay by her bedside, but Emma's body language, the way she curled away, the way her lashes fluttered with fear when Laura touched her blanket, made the choice clear. Daniel would return before dawn. Tonight, he needed answers. Rain began to drizzle, streaking across the glass in silver threads. The city outside blurred into shadows, neon lights bending like ghosts in the water. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight, muscles flexing as his mind replayed Laura's confession. Richard Kane. The name was a rot that spread backward through his memories. Desert winds. Radio static. A call for backup that never came. 2 men he couldn't save. Kane hadn't just returned. He had stepped directly into Daniel's home, into the fragile orbit of his family. That wasn't coincidence. That was design. Northbridge Logistics stood in the heart of downtown, a steel and glass monolith that loomed against the skyline. Daniel parked in the shadows of an adjacent garage, shutting off the engine. He didn't need a warrant, didn't need Officer Miller's permission. He needed eyes, proof, leverage. The building was quiet, its lobby dim, but the faint glow from the 8th floor windows told him Kane was still inside. Daniel's boots made no sound on the concrete as he crossed into the alley, slipping into the employee entrance with practiced ease. The lock was simple, too simple for a man trained to breach far worse. Inside, the corridors hummed with electricity. Vending machines, humming HVAC vents, white noise that dulled the edge of silence. Daniel moved like a shadow, hugging corners, counting cameras. Old habits returned like muscle memory, each movement calculated. On the 8th floor, laughter leaked through the cracked door of an office. He froze, pressing his back against the wall. Laura's voice. It was softer than at home, nervous, but trying to sound agreeable. "It's late, Richard. I should." Kane's voice cut her off, smooth and commanding. "Stay. We're not finished." The sound of liquid poured into glasses followed, the faint clink of crystal. Daniel's teeth clenched. Through the crack, he caught his first sight of Kane in years. Broad shoulders in a tailored suit, graying hair cropped close, that same self-satisfied grin Daniel remembered from the desert when he'd left them behind. Kane leaned against the desk, a gold coin glinting as he flipped it between his fingers. A small tick, but one Daniel had seen countless times under pressure. Laura stood stiffly near the window, arms crossed, body angled away. She smiled when Kane spoke, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her shoulders were rigid, her hands trembling just enough that Daniel noticed even from across the hall. Kane stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your husband will figure it out sooner or later. But by then, it'll be too late. You belong to me now, Laura. Don't forget that." Laura's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Daniel's chest burned, every instinct screaming to storm in, to snap Kane's neck where he stood. But he forced himself still. Rage without proof was suicide. He needed to understand how deep this ran. Kane chuckled, swirling the amber whiskey in his glass. "And as for the girl, unfortunate. I told her to keep quiet. She'll learn." Daniel's vision blurred, his hands curling into fists. The urge to end it right there threatened to overtake him. But then Kane added, his voice dropping lower. "You know what Hayes doesn't realize? This has never been about you. Or the girl. This has always been about him. And he'll come. He always does." Daniel's blood went cold. This wasn't an accident. Emma's broken arm, the threats, Laura's entanglement. It was all bait. A trap laid carefully, deliberately. He pulled back from the door, forcing himself to retreat down the hall. His breaths came sharp and measured, not from fear, but from the dangerous clarity of realization. Richard Kane hadn't just resurfaced. He had declared war, dragging Laura and Emma into the crossfire. Daniel stepped into the stairwell, the echoes of Kane's laughter following him like smoke. He gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. "This ends," He muttered to himself, voice low, steady, and lethal. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the soldier fully awaken inside him. Not the man who wanted peace, not the father who wanted quiet nights. The other man, the one forged in fire, trained to hunt predators like Cain. And Cain had just made the fatal mistake of reminding him who he really was. The night outside was thick and wet, rain cascading down the stairwell windows as Daniel slipped out of Northbridge. His boots struck puddles without sound, years of discipline making even fury quiet. He didn't start the truck right away. He sat there in the dark, hands gripping the wheel, chest rising and falling as he forced air through clenched teeth. This wasn't about Laura. It wasn't even about Emma. Cain wanted me. The realization tightened around him like a vice. Cain hadn't stumbled into his family's life by accident. Every step, the blackmail, the affair, the threats, was a calculated move, a chess game where Emma's broken arm was just the first pawn sacrificed. Daniel's phone buzzed in the cup holder. A message. From Laura. Where are you? Don't do anything stupid. He stared at the glowing words. The tone wasn't a wife worried about her husband's rage. It was fear of what Cain might do if Daniel acted. She wasn't trying to protect Daniel. She was trying to manage him, the way a hostage negotiator manages a gunman. Daniel's jaw tightened. He started the engine, but instead of turning toward home, he drove aimlessly through the rain-slicked streets, memories rising unbidden. The desert. 15 years ago, Daniel crouched in the sand, headset pressed against his ear. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Command, this is Echo Team. We are pinned at Sector 9. Requesting evac. Repeat, requesting evac. The only voice that answered was Richard Kane's, smooth and detached. Negative, Echo. Hold position. Reinforcements delayed. Delayed. That was the word Cain had used while two of Daniel's men bled out beside him, their lives pouring into the dust. Delayed, while Cain pulled back to safety. Daniel had carried the guilt for years, but in his gut he'd always known. Cain hadn't been delayed. He had walked away. And now, 15 years later, Cain had resurfaced in a tailored suit, coin in hand, smiling the same smile he wore that night. Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time it was Officer Miller. Need to confirm some details about Laura's boss. Can you call me? Daniel hesitated, then dialed back. Miller's voice was crisp. No small talk. We ran the company name your daughter mentioned. Northbridge Logistics. Registered CEO is Richard Cain. Big money contracts with defense suppliers, most of them buried under red tape. Man's got pull. He doesn't scare easy. Daniel's eyes narrowed. I know him. You do. Daniel's voice dropped, gravel in his throat. He used to command my unit. Left men to die. There was a long silence on the line. Miller exhaled. Then this isn't random. No, Daniel said, staring into the wet blur of city lights. This is personal. By the time Daniel returned to the hospital, dawn's first light was bleeding across the horizon. Inside, Emma still slept soundly, her small face softened by the haze of painkillers. But Laura was awake. She sat rigid in the corner chair, hands clasped in her lap, staring at nothing. Her eyes flicked up as Daniel entered, searching his face for clues. You went there, she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. He closed the door behind him, stepping closer until his shadow stretched across her knees. How long has he had his hooks in you? Her lips trembled. A year, maybe longer. Daniel's jaw flexed, but his voice was measured. Why didn't you tell me? Laura's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Because he doesn't just have me, Daniel. He has you. He knows things about your missions. About Echo Team. He said if I fought him, he'd expose everything. He'd bury us both. Daniel froze. The weight of her words settled like iron. Cain wasn't just punishing him through Emma. He was reaching back into Daniel's past, threatening to weaponize the very secrets he'd tried to bury. Laura looked down at her hands, her voice breaking. I thought I could keep it away from you. I thought if I bore it, Emma would never know. But then she saw. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Daniel turned toward Emma's sleeping form, her tiny casted arm cradled against her chest. His voice, when it came, was low and final. He's not going to bury us, Laura. He's not going to touch Emma again. This ends now. Laura's voice broke into a whisper. Daniel, please. He's more dangerous than you think. Daniel's eyes darkened, steady, unflinching. No, he's exactly as dangerous as I remember. In that moment, Daniel knew. The past he thought he'd escaped wasn't behind him. It was sitting in an office downtown, flipping a gold coin, waiting for him to walk through the door. And Daniel Hayes was done waiting. The hospital walls felt like they were closing in. Every tick of the clock on the wall drove Daniel deeper into the storm brewing inside him. He sat by Emma's bedside, watching her chest rise and fall as she slept. Each breath reminded him why he was still holding back, why Kane was still breathing. But restraint was running thin. At dawn, a nurse wheeled in a tray of breakfast, lukewarm oatmeal, juice in a plastic cup. Emma stirred, her eyelids fluttering. When she saw Daniel, her lips curved faintly. You stayed. Daniel leaned closer, brushing a stray strand of hair off her forehead. Of course I did. Emma tried to sit up, winced, and immediately leaned back. Does Mom know I'm mad at her? She whispered, her voice fragile. Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her everything. That none of this was her fault. That she had more strength than most grown men he'd known. But the truth would crush her even further. You don't need to worry about Mom, he said softly. I'll handle it. Emma nodded, trusting, then drifted back into drowsy silence. Outside the room, Daniel found Officer Miller leaning against the wall, arms folded. His uniform looked sharper in the early light, but his eyes were red from a night without sleep. I did more digging, Miller said. Your wife's boss, Kane? The man's record is clean, squeaky clean. Too clean. That usually means someone's cleaning it for him. Daniel's jaw tightened. He's got friends in high places. He always did. Miller studied him for a moment, then asked, You planning to take this into your own hands? Daniel didn't answer. The silence was enough. Miller sighed, scratching his jaw. Look, I don't know what history you two have, but don't get reckless. Men like Kane, people cover for them. You go at him without proof, the system protects him, not you. Daniel's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm not going through the system. The officer straightened. Then you're going to do something you can't take back. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the hospital door, toward his sleeping daughter. He already did something I can't take back. Later that afternoon, Daniel drove across town, not to Kane's office this time, but to an old bar on the edge of the industrial district. The place hadn't changed in a decade. Faded neon signs, wood paneling that smelled of stale beer. More importantly, it was where veterans gathered, the kind of men who carried scars the government preferred to forget. Inside, a few familiar faces lifted their heads. One in particular, Mason Clark, his former spotter, rose from a booth. His limp was worse, but his grip was as strong as ever when he clasped Daniel's hand. Didn't think I'd see you again, Mason said. His voice carried the gravel of too many cigarettes. I need intel, Daniel replied, wasting no time. Richard Kane, he's running Northbridge Logistics. Mason's face darkened instantly. I heard rumors. Private contracts, back channels, dirty money. Word is he's untouchable. Bought judges, bought cops. The works. Daniel leaned in. He hurt my daughter. Mason froze, his weathered face tightening. Then he's dead. Question is how fast you want it to happen. Daniel's eyes were hard. Not fast. Clean. I need leverage. Something that ties him to more than just me. Something no one can cover up. Mason hesitated, then lowered his voice. There's talk he was involved in an arms deal that went sideways last year. Cargo went missing. Men went missing. But no reports ever surfaced. If you can connect him to that, he let the implication hang. Daniel nodded slowly. Then he burns. Mason placed a heavy hand on Daniel's shoulder. Careful, brother. Kane doesn't leave loose ends. If he knows you're coming, he'll hit first. Daniel's gaze turned toward the rain-streaked window, where the gray sky bled into the horizon. Then I won't give him the chance. Back at the hospital, Laura sat alone in the corner of the room. Emma slept soundly, the steady beep of the monitor filling the silence. When Daniel entered, Laura looked up, her face pale, her eyes hollow. You went digging, didn't you? She whispered. Daniel didn't deny it. Mason says Kane's dirty. Arms deals. Missing cargo. Missing men. He's not just a predator. He's a liability. Laura's face crumpled. And if you go after him, he'll use me. He'll use Emma. That's what he does. He doesn't fight fair, Daniel. Daniel stepped closer, his voice a low growl. Then neither will I. For the first time, Laura's eyes widened. Not at Kane, but at her husband. She saw it in his face. The soldier she had thought was buried was back. And Richard Kane had no idea what storm he had just called down. Silence settled after Laura's warning, a tight, humming silence that made the machines in Emma's room sound louder than they were. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, watching the gentle rise and fall beneath the blanket. The storm inside him had shape now, edges way to target. A soft rap on the door. A young nurse leaned in, cheeks pink from hurrying. Mr. Hayes? Security asked if this room has had any visitors besides family. A man came to the desk earlier, asking for Emma by name. No flowers, no balloons, just questions. Daniel's voice didn't change. Description? Tall, broad, close-cropped hair. He kept flipping a coin against his knuckle. She mimed the motion without realizing it. When we asked for ID, he left. The coin. Daniel's throat went dry for a heartbeat. If he comes back, call security and Officer Miller. No one unless I say so. She nodded, eyes wide, and slipped out. Laura sank into the chair. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse until the leather creaked. He's pushing you to move. That's what he wants. Daniel didn't look at her. He doesn't get a say in what I do. Her phone chimed. She flinched like she'd been struck, then stared at the screen as if it might bite. Daniel saw the color drain from her face. What is it? Laura swallowed. He sent a photo. She turned the phone. Grainy black and white. An 8th floor hallway. A shadowed figure crossing a camera's angle. Broad shoulders, familiar posture. Daniel recognized his own outline. Beneath it, a message. Walk a step further and you fall alone. Tell him to go home, Laura. Daniel took the phone, studied the timestamp. Last night. He handed it back. He's baiting charges. He will press them, Laura whispered. He will make it look like you're the danger here. The door opened again. Officer Miller this time, posture rigid, jaw set. He closed the door behind him before speaking. Northbridge filed a trespass complaint at 4:20. They sent over a still from their camera. I told them we'd take the statement later. His eyes pinned Daniel. You want to tell me if that's you? Daniel didn't blink. I want to see his face. Miller exhaled through his nose. I can't protect you from your choices, Hayes. But I can keep a unit on this door and put a note in the system. No interviews with your daughter without you present. He lowered his voice. I also pulled the hospital cam footage from this floor. Someone tried for this room at 211. Tall suit, cap pulled low. He didn't make it past the desk. Laura folded inward at that, a quiet, boneless collapse. Daniel's hand twitched toward her, then stopped. What's his next move? Miller asked. He'll try to isolate, Daniel said. Make me look like the problem. Take away my ground. Then I'll widen yours, Miller replied. But don't make me regret it. He left as quickly as he'd come. Emma stirred, lashes fluttering. Dad! Daniel moved to her side, voice turning soft like a hand over a candle. I'm here. Was someone at the door? Just the officer. Keeping you safe. He smoothed the blanket, and Emma's shoulders loosened by degrees. Laura rose, hovering near the foot of the bed. Hey, baby. Emma's gaze slid away. I'm tired. The room cooled again. Daniel felt the distance between mother and daughter like a draft. His phone buzzed in his palm. Mason. Got something. Port manifest from last year. Container numbers that vanished. Guess whose signature shows up on a transfer memo? Daniel's pulse ticked. Kane. And a name you won't like. Laura Hayes countersigned as compliance witness on 2 of them. Might be forged. Might not. Either way, it's leverage. Daniel looked at Laura. She was staring at her shoes, lost. He typed back, meet me in 2 hours. Don't text again. He pocketed the phone. I need to step out for 10 minutes. Coffee. He looked at Laura. You stay in sight. If you leave this room without Officer Miller, I'll find you first. She nodded, small, wounded. I'm not running. In the hallway, the air felt colder. Daniel found the security desk, asked to see the 211 clip. The guard, a compact woman with a posture that said former MP, rolled it back. The figure in a cap never showed his face, but the coin flash caught the lens for a blink, a glint of gold against the fluorescent glare. "Copy of this," Daniel said. She hesitated, then slid a USB from a drawer. "I didn't see you take this." "Understood." He turned to go, and almost ran into two suits moving toward room 214 with practice purpose. A woman led, badge already in her hand. "Daniel Hayes." He stepped aside, body blocking their line of sight to the door. "Who's asking?" "Child Protective Services," she said, steady and neutral. "We receive an anonymous report regarding possible domestic abuse leading to a fracture in a minor. We're here to interview the child and assess safety." Behind his ribs, something cold snapped. "Anonymous," Daniel repeated, voice even because it had to be. "Standard policy," she said. "Please step aside." Officer Miller appeared from nowhere, intercepting. "Hold up. There's an active police investigation into an assault that occurred off-site. You can observe with father present. No solo interviews." The CPS worker read the room, then nodded. "We can do that." Daniel felt the trap, close, quiet, invisible, effective. This was how Kane fought, not with fists, but with systems. Stain the father. Cast out. Divide the room. He breathed once. Twice. Then he opened the door. Emma's eyes widened at the strangers. Daniel moved to her side and took her hand where it wouldn't hurt. "They have to ask some questions, kiddo. I'll be right here." She squeezed his fingers. The CPS worker smiled gently. "Emma, can you tell me what happened to your arm?" Emma looked at her father, then at her mother, and finally down at the cast. When she spoke, her voice was thin but sure. "A man hurt me, not my dad." The woman's pen paused. "Do you feel safe with your father?" Emma didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Do you feel safe with your mother?" A beat. Emma's throat worked. "I don't know." The room changed temperature. Laura's breath hitched, a tiny wounded sound. The CPS worker glanced at Miller, then back to her form. "Thank you, Emma." When they left, the door clicked softly like a trigger catching. Daniel stroked Emma's hair once and stood. He looked at Laura, at the fear and shame, and something else moving behind her eyes. Kane had made his move. Daniel made his in silence. He slid the USB into his pocket, memorized the time on the wall clock, and walked toward the exit with the gait of a man who had already chosen the next battlefield. Rain had stopped by the time Daniel stepped out of the hospital, but the air still smelled of wet asphalt and steel. He moved with deliberate calm through the parking lot, though inside, every nerve was sparking. Kane had just escalated. Not a shove in a hallway, not a whispered threat, but Child Protective Services at Emma's bedside. A knife disguised as paperwork. Daniel slid into his truck, shut the door, and sat in the quiet. His reflection in the windshield looked older than yesterday. Shadows under his eyes, jaw clenched hard enough to ache. He replayed Emma's answer, her soft, trembling, "I don't know." It hadn't been a rejection. It had been a wound. A child torn between love and fear, because her mother's silence had turned into complicity. He gripped the wheel until his knuckles whitened. Kane was using Emma's fear as ammunition, and Laura, whether trapped or complicit, was the lever. The phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A single word from Mason. Now. The bar was nearly empty at mid-morning. A few old regulars slouched over coffee and cheap whiskey, ignoring the world. Mason waited in the back booth, folders spread across the table, his limp more pronounced as he stood to greet Daniel. "Got what you asked," Mason said, sliding a folder forward. "Port records. Manifests. 2 containers rerouted without paperwork last year. Arms shipments, military grade. Both transfers signed under Kane's company name." Daniel flipped through the pages. Every detail was meticulous, every signature crisp. But then he froze. At the bottom of 2 forms was a second signature. Not Kane's. Laura Hayes. His throat tightened. He dragged her into this. Dragged, or she stepped? Mason asked carefully. Daniel shot him a glare sharp enough to silence the thought. She doesn't have the spine for this. He forged it, or forced it. Mason leaned back, rubbing his knee. If this gets out, she's the scapegoat. Kane walks. She burns. Daniel stared at the papers. Kane wasn't just blackmailing Laura with records. He had planted her inside his operations, turned her into a shield. If Northbridge went down, Laura went with it. And by extension, so did Daniel. Mason lit a cigarette, exhaling slow. You're not just fighting for Emma anymore. You're fighting to clear your wife's name, even if she doesn't deserve it. Daniel said nothing. He thought of Emma's cast. Her whisper, "Don't leave me." He thought of Laura's eyes, hollow with shame, but not cruelty. "She's guilty of silence," Daniel muttered, voice low. "Not of this." Back at the hospital, Laura looked up as Daniel entered, her face pale. "Where did you go?" He dropped the folder on the bed beside her. The paper slid out, Laura's name staring back at her in ink. Her breath hitched. "No," she shook her head. "I never. Daniel, I swear, I never signed these." Daniel's voice was iron. "I believe you, but a judge won't. CPS won't. He set you up, Laura. He's using you as the fuse." Tears spilled over her cheeks as she clutched the papers, her hands trembling. "He said if I ever crossed him, he'd destroy us." I didn't know what he meant. Emma stirred in the bed, her voice small. "Mom." Laura quickly wiped her face and leaned over, forcing a smile. "Hey, baby. I'm here." But Emma's eyes lingered on the papers clutched in her mother's hands. "Is that why he hurt me?" Laura froze, her mouth opening, then closing. The silence was answer enough. Emma's lips quivered, tears welling again. "Why didn't you stop him?" The question landed like a knife. Laura broke, sobbing quietly. "I tried. I thought I could protect you by staying quiet. I was wrong." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to shield Emma from every ounce of this truth, but lies had already corroded too much. That evening, Officer Miller returned with an update. "Northbridge's complaint against you vanished." Daniel frowned. "Vanished? Withdrawn. No explanation." Which means Kane's playing another angle. If I had to guess, he's clearing the board so he can move a bigger piece. Daniel's instincts prickled. Kane wasn't retreating. He was resetting the trap. Miller lowered his voice. "I've got eyes on the building, but if you're planning something, Hayes, you'd better do it fast." Kane doesn't wait long. When night fell, Daniel stood at the hospital window, watching rain start again in fine silver sheets. Emma slept, her hand curled around a stuffed bear a nurse had given her. Laura sat slumped in the corner, drained. Daniel's reflection stared back at him from the glass. A soldier, a father, a man standing at the edge of war. Kane had moved through shadows, through systems, through fear. But Daniel's patience was ending. He turned from the window, his voice steady, quiet but final. "Tomorrow I go to him." Laura's head jerked up, eyes wide. "Daniel." He cut her off with a look, steel in his gaze. "No more waiting. No more hiding. He brought this fight to my daughter. Now I finish it." And though he said nothing more, Laura knew. The soldier she had once begged to leave behind was fully awake again. And Richard Kane had just set the stage for his own reckoning. The morning broke gray and heavy, clouds sagging low over the city like a lid pressed down to keep the world quiet. Daniel hadn't slept. He hadn't even tried. He spent the long hours pacing the hospital room, watching over Emma as she dreamed under the haze of her painkillers, listening to the machines tick off her life one steady beat at a time. Every sound felt magnified. The rustle of sheets, the creak of the chair when Laura shifted, the soft hum of the air conditioning. At 6 a.m., Daniel slipped out of the room. He didn't tell Laura where he was going. He didn't need to. She knew. Northbridge Logistics loomed like a fortress against the gray sky, its mirrored windows reflecting the storm above. Daniel parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, his movements casual but precise. To anyone watching, he looked like a man heading to work. But inside, his body was a taut wire pulled to its breaking point. The lobby was quiet, too quiet for a building this size. The security guard at the desk gave him a long look, but didn't stop him. That was the first red flag. Kane knew he was coming. Daniel's boots clicked softly against the polished marble floor as he stepped into the elevator. The metal doors closed, sealing him in a mirrored box. He caught his own reflection, jaw set, eyes dark, the faint scar above his eyebrow a ghost from another war. When the doors opened on the 8th floor, the air felt different, colder, as if the climate system had been turned down just for him. Kane's office door was open. Inside, Richard Kane sat behind a massive glass desk, flipping his gold coin in the air. Catch. Flip. Catch. The sound was steady, taunting. A decanter of whiskey gleamed beside him, 2 glasses already poured. Daniel Hayes, Kane said smoothly, his smile curling like smoke. You never could resist walking straight into the lion's den. Daniel stepped inside, shoulders squared, gaze locked on Kane. You touch my daughter. Kane caught the coin and let it rest between his fingers. I disciplined a girl who didn't know her place. And in doing so, I proved my point. Your house isn't as safe as you think. The calm in his voice was worse than shouting. It wasn't bluster. It was certainty. Daniel's fists tightened at his sides. Say her name. Out loud. Kane's grin widened. Emma. He rolled the name on his tongue, like it belonged to him. She looks nothing like you, does she? The words landed like a bullet. Daniel froze, his heartbeat hammering. He'd heard the cruelty in Kane's voice before, but this was different. This wasn't just about Emma's injury. It was about something deeper. Kane leaned back in his chair, swirling the whiskey glass. I chose Laura for a reason, Hayes. 12 years ago, when we rotated home after that desert op, you were too busy burying bodies to notice who stayed close to her. We had time, and 9 months later, she gave you a child. Or so you thought. The world tilted. Daniel's chest constricted, his vision narrowing. He wanted to dismiss it as another manipulation, another lie spun to break him. But the look in Kane's eyes wasn't bluff. It was revelation. You're lying, Daniel said, but his voice lacked the force he intended. Kane chuckled, low and confident. You think I'd risk everything for a bluff? Why do you think she's been so obedient, so silent? Because she knows. Emma isn't yours, Hayes. She's mine. The floor seemed to drop out beneath him. Images cascaded through his mind. Emma's smile, her drawings, her whispered pleas not to leave her. His little girl. His world. And now Kane was twisting that bond, poisoning it with his claim. Daniel stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the desk. His voice was low, guttural, trembling with rage. You can forge papers. You can twist systems. But Emma is mine. She'll never be yours. Kane raised his glass, unfazed. We'll see. Daniel left the office with every muscle screaming for violence. He hadn't killed Kane, not yet. But the truth, or the weapon Kane had dangled as truth, gnawed at him. When he reached the street, the storm finally broke, rain hammering down in sheets. Daniel stood in it, letting the water soak his clothes, fists clenched, his heart torn between fury and despair. The battle wasn't just against Kane anymore. It was against a truth that could unravel everything Daniel thought he knew about his daughter. And Kane had made sure he couldn't ignore it. Rain was still clinging to Daniel's jacket when he stepped back into room 214. Laura stood as if a wire ran through her spine. Emma watched from the pillows, eyes glossy, trying to read the weather in her father's face. He closed the door gently, moved to Emma first, and kissed her hair. I'm here, he said. Then he straightened and looked at Laura. We talk. Now. Laura's fingers knotted together. Daniel, he said, Emma isn't mine. The words were flat, controlled, like he was easing a blade from a sheath. He said, you knew. I need the truth. All of it. Emma's eyes flicked between them, panic rising. Dad. Daniel sat, kept his voice warm for her. Put your headphones on, kiddo. Watch something silly. He waited until a cartoon theme trickled from her tablet, then turned back to Laura, the warmth gone. Talk. Laura seemed to shrink and harden at once. Her mouth opened twice before sound came. 12 years ago, when you were still deployed, he came by the house. Said he was checking on me for you. He knew where the spare key was. She stared at a spot on the floor like it was a cliff edge. I told myself it was my fault for letting him in. I told myself a lot of things. Daniel didn't move. The silence between each word was a drumbeat. I found out I was pregnant after, she whispered. You came home to a nursery already painted. You didn't ask math questions. You just loved her. And I couldn't take that away. I thought if I told you, You'd go after him and never come back. Or he'd bury you the way he threatened to bury me. Did you ever tell him? Daniel asked, and felt his jaw flex when he realized he already knew the answer. He told me, she said, voice cracking. He called the week Emma was born. Said he'd seen a copy of the hospital paperwork. Said he'd always know. Then he disappeared, until he became my boss. She let out a strangled laugh. Said fate was funny. Daniel let air out slow. The room felt too small for the ache in it. So, when Emma walked in, he said he wasn't protecting a secret. He was punishing a reminder. Laura nodded, tears running freely now. I tried to keep it away from her. From you. I was wrong. A cartoon jingle ended. Emma pulled one ear cup off. Mom? What are you talking about? Daniel's heart pinched. He took Emma's hand, careful of the cast. Grown-up mess, kiddo. Not your mess. Listen to me. He waited until her eyes locked on his. I am your father. That's not a question. That's a fact. Emma searched his face, scared, and then the fear softened. She slid the ear cup back on. A knock. The door cracked. Officer Miller stepped in. We got a call. Alarm tripped on this floor's east stairwell. He glanced at Daniel's soaked cuffs, then at Laura's collapsed shoulders, and read the whole scene fast. I've got 2 uniforms checking it out. Keep the door locked. An overhead speaker popped. The hospital's calm voice. Security to east stairwell, level 2. Miller vanished as quickly as he'd come. Daniel moved to the door and slid the latch. He had time to take one breath before a distant scuffle thudded through the wall, followed by the sharp bark of a command. Hands where I can see them. Minutes stretched. Emma's fingers gripped Daniel's, small and fierce. Then Miller returned, jaw hard, a Ziploc in his hand. Inside, a gold coin glinted. Your friend dropped this when my officer put him on the floor, Miller said. Hat, cap, burner phone. Text on the screen said, photo wristband. In and out. No name, but the sender IDs saved under a single letter. K. Laura made a sound like a sob folded in half. Daniel held the coin in his palm. Heavy, warm, familiar as a scar. The rage that rose was clean, almost quiet. Miller continued. We'll pull prints, but hired muscle rarely keeps souvenirs for long. Still, this helps. He met Daniel's eyes. You want him in a box, build the lid tight. I'll give you space, not a free pass. Daniel nodded once. Understood. When they were alone again, Daniel turned to Laura. We do a test. Quietly. Chain of custody through Miller. Not because I needed to love her. Because he can't use blood as a weapon anymore. Laura swallowed. If it's true, Daniel said, and his voice didn't waver, then all he's proven is biology. Not fatherhood. Emma yawned, the tablet slipping against the blanket. Daniel tucked it back. His touch lingered a second on the edge of her cast. The coin shone dully on the bedside tray, a small sun caught under glass. Daniel stared at it, then at the clock, and felt the shape of the end settle into place. You said he'd bury me, he told Laura, almost gently. You were wrong. He picked up the coin, closed his fist around it until the edges bit his skin, and set it down again with care, like marking a spot on a map only he could read. Tomorrow, he said, to no one and to everyone in the room, he learns what it means to lose. Daniel sat alone in the dim hospital family lounge, the captured burner phone cold in his palm, the gold coin heavy in his pocket. The text on the screen, photo wristband. In and out, kept flashing through his head. It wasn't random. It was specific. Wristbands listed names, MRN's blood type. He scrolled to a blank message and typed, mimicking the clipped tone from earlier threads. Change of plan. Doc asking questions. Bring the file. Garage B, level 4. 20 minutes. He hit send to the contact, saved as K. Then he called Miller. South Garage, he said. Level 4. He's coming for me. Hayes. I'm not swinging, Daniel cut in. I'm talking. But bring ears. Miller exhaled. Unit en route. Body cams, long lens, audio. Don't get clever. Daniel slipped the coin into his fist and headed for the elevator. Garage B was a concrete cave, strip lights humming, rainwater ticking from the ceiling. Daniel stood by a low wall where the city's wet glow bled in. He heard the elevator before he saw it. The doors parted. Kane stepped out alone, suit immaculate, cap low, a new coin walking across his knuckles like a trick he'd practiced since boyhood. You never learn, Kane said, amused. You come when called. Daniel didn't move. You sent a man for my kid's wristband. Kane smiled lazily. Verification. For a lie. Daniel's voice stayed level. Your dog tags overseas, AB. I remember because we lost a medic with O blood that night, and you were whining for compatibility. Laura's O. Emma's wristband says O negative. He let the words hang in the damp air. AB plus O can't make O. Not ever. Whatever you did to Laura 12 years ago, you are not Emma's father. For the first time, the coin paused. Kane's eyes cooled. Blood types are parlor games. No, Daniel said softly. It's the math you can't bully. The one weapon you don't get. He took one step closer, just enough for the microphones Miller had tucked behind a column to drink the words. Say something useful. Like why you broke a child's arm. Kane tilted his head, the smirk returning by force. Because she opened a door that wasn't for her. Because you only move when prodded. Because I wanted you here, in garages and stairwells, where you belong. Daniel's hand stayed at his sides. And the port, he said, barely more than breath. Containers. Your signature. Laura's forged on too. Missing cargo. Missing men. The system you bought won't cover all of it. Kane's jaw clicked. You think a veteran with a limp and a stack of photocopies scares me? Judges answer my calls. Then this one's for the court of daylight, Daniel said. He opened his hand and showed the coin. Your man dropped it when my officer put him on the floor. Prince, trace, text from K. It ties. Kane's expression barely changed, but his shoulders shifted, an instinctive coil. Daniel saw it and moved first. Not a punch, not a choke, just one hard shove that took Kane back onto the hood of the car, loud enough to trigger the garage alarm. It was theater, not assault, the crack of metal buying 2 seconds of truth. Kane spat, fury finally naked. You don't get to keep her. Daniel leaned in, voice calm enough to be terrifying. I already have. You try to make blood a leash. Turns out love cut it first. Red and blue bled over concrete as tires squealed. Doors slammed. Miller's voice, amplified, came from everywhere at once. Richard Kane, hands where I can see them. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought Kane might go for the waistband. Instead, Kane raised both palms and smiled at the ceiling, the old arrogance snapping back into place like a mask. On what charge, officer? Let's start with assault on a minor, witness intimidation, attempted interference in a police investigation, Miller said, stepping into view with 2 uniforms fanned wide. And we'll keep turning cards until we hit the ports. Kane cut a look at Daniel that promised later fires. Daniel answered with nothing. Cuffs clicked. The coin hit the concrete with a dull, final sound as an evidence tech bagged it. Later, the hospital felt warmer. Laura sat at the end of the bed, wrecked but present. Emma lay propped on pillows, the bear tucked under her good arm. Daniel took a seat where she could see his face first. Where'd you go? Emma asked, voice small. To make sure a bad man can't come near you again. He glanced at Laura, then back to Emma. And to tell you something important, people can lie about a lot of things. Blood tells the truth. We'll do a test the right way with Officer Miller. But I already know what it'll say. Emma's eyes searched his. What? That you're mine, he said simply. In every way that matters. And in the way that scared him most. Her mouth quivered. She nodded, then tugged his sleeve and pulled his hand to her cheek. Laura's voice broke. I'm so sorry. Daniel looked at her a long time. Then be brave now. Statement to Miller. Everything. The blackmail, the signatures, the nights. We turn all of it on. She swallowed and nodded. All of it. He touched Emma's hair, the steady beep-beep like a metronome under the moment. The war Kane carried into their home didn't end with a gunshot. It ended with math and light, with men who wore cameras instead of capes, with a father who chose love over the quick, easy burn of revenge. Outside, sirens faded. Inside, Emma's breathing evened. Daniel stayed, one hand around his daughter's fingers, the other open on the blanket, empty at last of a coin he never needed.